Hello, it's Tuesday night at 6:30, so it's time for what we're reading. You can see I'm outside tonight because it's gorgeous and it's spring. And this time of year, the library gets a real run on books on gardening. Everybody's out there in their garden. Everyone wants to make something happen. And one of the best people to talk to at a time like this is an author of a lot of the books that we have on the shelf about garden and host of a Wood Radio's Wood TV. Wood, listen to me, Rick. Did I tell you I would mess that up?
It's
Wood
okay.
Radio's 2 hours Saturday morning show from 9 to 11 that has won 7 MAB awards. Tell everybody what an MAB award is, Rick.
Michigan Association of Broadcasters Award.
Yes, and he's also a co-owner of Flowerland, and knows everything there is to know about plants and puns. Rick, it's so good for you to. I'm so glad you're here with me tonight. How are you
Thanks, Penny.
doing?
It's great to be here. Oh, what? I'm doing fantastic. Usually, when people ask me, how are you doing? I simply say, I'm staying grounded. And that's exactly what I'm doing tonight.
And you have behind you some of the books we have on our shelves in our library. Why don't you show us some of those books that you have written?
My first book was I Just Wet My Plants. It's based on my 25 years, over 25 years of doing live broadcast radio, answering gardening questions for people. And Penny, I based it on a fictitious character called Wilma Plants Grow. So that's I Just Wet My Plants. Um, and then my second book was a serious book, Operation Rumination. Something like 92.7% of people never served in the military. And I never served. I mean, I pay my taxes and that kind of thing, but that's expected, 92.7. I'm one of that 92.7. So I spent a year with people who served in the military to learn from them. And then I also did the basic training
Really?
for a 17 to 21-year-old entering the Army and was tested at the end of the year by a drill sergeant, and the results are in the book. So, Operation Rumination. And then my latest book, just released last fall, I Need to Change My Plants. And it's essentially about how throughout history plants have always saved the day, including last year when something I like to call a plant demic broke out. So it's been amazing. Yeah, fun.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. So what happened in the plant business when COVID hit?
Well, when COVID hit initially, uh, businesses like ours were shut down. And I will never forget it. TV8 sent out a news crew to interview me as we were shutting off the lights in the building and shutting down, closing the doors. And it's like you're looking over the edge of the cliff, like what's next. And as the TV crew is leaving and the building is dark and cold at a time when it's usually bustling with people buying plants and looking at plants, my phone dinged and I got a message from a person that I had never met before. And that person sent me a message and said, better to be a warrior tending to his garden than a gardener at war. And I was thinking, boy, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if I was at war holding a shovel and a rake, I'd probably look a little ridiculous, right? But better to be
Right.
a warrior tending to his garden, and that stuck with me. And that's in this book. I need to change my plants. But yes, amazing. And so many buzzwords have come out of the pandemic related to gardening, like backyarding. People now want to define what is the purpose of your backyard? Is it for the dogs? Is it for entertaining? Is it my place to relax? Plant keeping is another buzzword that's come out of that. People are collecting plants, enjoying plants again. I guess we define it as anachronism. What is old is new. So people start churning butter, making candles, and gardening, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And it hasn't let up yet since we opened the doors on April 30th of last year.
Do you find people are growing? I mean, are they growing food? Are they growing their own um, herbs? I mean, is it kind of a homesteading kind of gardening, or are people growing flowers and those kind of things too?
Anything plants. However, garden seeds have been huge. The demand for garden seeds, grow your own food, yes, absolutely. Herbs, and then houseplants. Houseplants has just been amazing. And there's a whole new generation of plant enthusiasts, and that's what's been really fun for me to watch. And I'll have, like, I've got my glass of water here. I'll have someone who will come walking up to me holding a plant like this. And they don't hold it with one hand, they hold it with two. They're nurturing it. And they hold the plant and then they look at me and they say, "Is this going to live?" And I'm
Oh,
like, "Well, if you put it back, maybe it will." No, I don't say that. But it's just been so much fun. And there's so much interest in plants and in nurturing plants. It's just been great to see.
I will confess that that was me because I was a killer of plants. I'm one of those people on a poster, probably in Flowerland, don't sell this woman a plant because she is evil to them. But this year, it was so hard, especially this winter, being in the house, so much. I needed to bring nature and I
Yes.
needed leaves. So I went to Flowerland. I know that sounds like I'm planning that, but I went to Flowerland and it was fab. I bought some huge plants. Like, I'm gonna just do my best and see what happens. And they're thriving.
Oh
So I
yeah.
have you to
You can
thank for that.
you can do it. You can
Yeah.
do it. And, I say that in my first book. If you haven't killed any plants, you're not trying hard enough. So go ahead and kill some plants. And as far as the garden plants are concerned, Penny, like the herbs and the vegetables, I have always said prior to COVID that tomatoes and peppers are the gateway drug to gardening. In other words, people will try a tomato plant, they'll try a pepper plant, and if they have some success, then they're going to move on to hydrangeas and all these other wonderful plants that we have to share with people. So,
And I don't know if you know about this, Rick, but right now at KDL Libraries, we have our seed library going on.
oh yes, I do.
Yeah, so you can go into a KDL branch and there's little packets of seeds that people have harvested from their own plants. Um, and you can plant them in your yard. And sometimes you get fabulous surprises from those. I planted one of the, I feel bad saying this. I don't mean this in a mean way, but I planted one of the seeds hoping to grow some basil for my garden because I
Mm-hmm.
love basil.
Oh,
So
me
I
too.
grabbed a basil packet and I'm like nursing it and it doesn't smell. It came up, which was amazing. Just when it sprouts through the dirt, that's just a fabulous feeling. Look, there it is, the little
Yeah.
green sprout. Um, and it got bigger and it got bigger, but it didn't smell like basil to me, and it didn't look like the leaves I see in the grocery store to me. But it kept growing, and I nurtured it, and it was getting bigger than I thought, but not as leafy as I thought. And then it grew a tomato.
Whoa. So was it mislabeled or was it your green thumb?
Yeah,
Because
who
if
knows?
you
Do you think
discovered a
I
new
have that
plant
power?
here, I want to cut on the royalties there, Penny. We call that basil instinct. That's what we call it.
So I think things like that are more apt to happen sometimes with our home harvested and sorted seeds, but it's still fabulous.
Oh,
And I love that they're local seeds. You know what I mean? It's just terrific. So
yeah.
come in and pick one up, add to your garden. But if you really want to make sure that you're getting basil or tomatoes, you might want to go over to Flowerland and talk to the experts there. Just to make
Well,
a
yeah, and when I go out and talk to people too, and by the way, as far as killing the plants are concerned, when I go out and talk to groups or with my radio show and people come up to me, they'll shake my hand vigorously and then they'll say, "You're Rick Vuyst," and then the next words out of their mouth are, "I have a brown thumb. Everything I touch dies." And I usually say to them, "Now that's a piece of information I would have liked before you shook my hand." But it's okay to kill some plants. Like I say, gardeners are just like any other people. Three types of people in the world: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what in the world just happened. And so we take it day by day.
And something else that you are making happen that I didn't know about, Rick, is you've got a podcast.
Yes, yes. The podcast is based on the Flowerland show. You can find it on Apple Podcast, any podcast platform, and it's loads of fun for me. And it's really fun to watch the analytics because for some reason there's a number of people in France and Germany who listen to the show, and I'm like, I can't speak French, so I have no idea what they're getting out of it, but wonderful.
Well, a lot of French people speak English.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Um, I was also wanted to mention because we threw in podcasts, so I have to say, because I'm with Amy Van Andel branch, to
Yes,
tell everybody to come check out our new podcast room, which you can reserve at kdl.org/podcast. We've got a room set up specifically to record podcasts. We've got a little recording machine there that even has buttons that make a laugh track and
that's great.
an applause line, so it's kind of fun. Um, and you can reserve that and record your podcast there and upload it wherever you like. Now, you probably have a fancy studio, don't you, Rick?
Well, we record from the ninth floor on 77 Monroe downtown Wood Radio Studios. But I had a friend who called me about your podcast studio and said, "This is incredible. This is, I mean, kudos to you for doing that. That's fantastic. That really
Yeah, I
is."
hope it gets a lot of views. I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear all the podcast people make in there. Um, when did you start doing your podcast? How long have you been doing it?
Well, the podcast, I mean, I've been doing my radio show since 1993. So I guess 27, 28 years. The podcast a few years ago, we kicked that in, and it's just it's taken off, and it's fun because people can listen in the car. They can listen, because everyone, some people are busy on Saturday mornings between 9 and 11, so this gives them an opportunity to listen to the Flowerland show. And the great thing about it is that it's your friends and your neighbors who are calling in with their questions,
Oh,
uh,
great.
and then for most people they can relate to it. I'd say the number one question that we get is hydrangeas, and
Really?
yeah, and the number two question is probably weeds, closely followed by moles and deer and all the other animal problems and that type of thing we
I
endure in the
understand. You can tell by my backyard. I understand the deer and the all the rodents and the vermin. But hydrangea, are they hard to grow or why are they the big question?
They're the big question because people become frustrated by them. They want the macrophylla, macro meaning big, phylla meaning leaf, the big leaf hydrangeas. They want them to bloom. And unfortunately, here in Michigan, we have this period between November and March where it gets a little rough around here. And they bloom on old and new wood. So if you lose those blooms on the old wood, then the next year you just get foliage growth, but you don't get the blossoms. And so it tends to frustrate people. But there are many different types of hydrangeas. There's panicled hydrangeas, the quercifolias, the oak leaf hydrangeas, climbing hydrangeas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can make your head spin and talk for 2 hours about this. And that's why there's so much confusion. But I guess that's why we're there. So to give people a good, swift kick in the plants.
Well, why I'm here usually is to ask what you're reading. Now we know what you're writing and we know what you're broadcasting, but you did let me know that there is a type of book that you enjoy.
Oh,
So tell me about that, Rick.
I'm a history fanatic, and I think the reason for I was born in 1959, so I'm an Apollo age kid. I drank a lot of Tang as a kid. Um, a year or so ago, I tried to drink Tang again, and it gave me a stomach ache. I can't believe we drank that as kids. But Apollo age kids, so I would have been 10 years old when Neil Armstrong stepped out on the moon with Buzz Aldrin. And Apollo age kids are people that need uh, they need a goal. They want to be driven. That's the first thing. The next thing is they need a plan, and it's usually made up as they go. And then the third issue is you don't have enough time to get it done, just like the Apollo Moonshot program. But I picked up this book. This is typical of the type of book I love to read. This is American Moonshot,
Oh,
Douglas
yes.
Brinkley, and I love this book. And the space race, and it's like I can't get enough of it. So I love sitting down and reading it, and just the terminology alone, American Moonshot. Um, I often wondered, where did that word come from, moonshot, and it comes from Vin Scully, the famous baseball announcer. Uh,
Really?
yeah, when the Dodgers left Brooklyn, New York. And by the way, they're called the Dodgers because they were named after the people who had dodged the trolley cars in the street, and that's
Oh,
why they were called. And the
I
name
didn't
stuck when they moved to Los Angeles. So they moved to Los Angeles, and they don't have a baseball stadium,
know.
and so they play in the Coliseum, which is suited for football. And they had this player called Wally Moon, who was a left-hand hitter, and he learned how to hit the ball high in the air over a screen because left field was so short because it was a football field the way they had it configured. And Vin Scully coined the phrase Wally Moon, moonshot, and that's where moonshot came from, and it stuck. Yeah, so I love trivia like that. If you're ever on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or Jeopardy or something like that, that kind of stuff comes in handy. But yeah, a book like this, oh, I just eat it up. So, and then
So
of
is
course,
that one of those, is it
pardon?
really suspenseful? Does it make you worried about them? I mean, we all know the outcome, but
Yeah, that isn't that the great thing though? You know the outcome. I've been watching the Lincoln series too. And you know the outcome, but still it's suspenseful, and that's the
yeah.
great thing about history. And that's what I talk about in my book too. I Need to Change My Plants. Throughout history, plants have always saved the day. With Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, Boris Berkman, who's a guy who said, "Hey, these milkweed growing along the lakeshore in Lake Michigan, we can use them to fill the life preservers of sailors and aviators during World War II," which is what they did. Yeah, so I mean, just example after example. Or people last year were surprised that there was a toilet paper shortage. I wasn't surprised. It's happened before. I mean, 1973, there was a congressman from Wisconsin that said there was going to be a toilet paper shortage. And then Johnny Carson picked up on it and mentioned it on The Tonight Show. And then, sure enough, there was a toilet paper shortage. There was a run on toilet paper, which, by the way, in this book, I give the 8 perfect alternatives to toilet paper in plant material in case that does happen again. So
Oh my goodness,
it's in the
grab
book.
that book.
And I don't even know where I was going with this. What was your question? I'm sorry.
I think we're still talking about the moonshot.
Oh yes, yes. So with the moonshot, just I don't know. It's just a part of who I am, and it was so impactful on me as a kid. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just
Do
can't
you
get
think,
enough.
Rick, that's part of the reason why you're a marathon runner too, is you need that goal to reach for?
Well, yeah, and that's a great point, Penny, because I always tell people a couple things about running. I'm going to be running in the Chicago Marathon this fall, but with running, yeah, the goal thing. However, what I love about running is, unlike in the workplace or in life, I have never run in a race where they've moved the finish line. I always know where the finish line is, and it's a great feeling crossing it, and they never move the finish line on me.
Yeah,
That's one thing I love about running. But
something you can count on.
it's something you can count on, but you set that goal, and it's great. And then the other thing about running, for people who don't run, they look at us like we're crazy, and I understand that because I am a little crazy. Uh, but and I always find it fascinating when people put out the argument saying, "Well, for each mile you run, you add 5 minutes to your life." And I'm like, "Well, if it takes you 10 minutes to run that mile, that's not very good math, right? Get 5 to give up 10, but whatever." I love it. I'm addicted to it. I think it's a great thing. So, but
Well,
gardening, of course, is great exercise too, and I think that's part of the reason people last year really got into it also.
I don't think it's going to slow down. I hear a lot of people are excited for this growing season.
Yeah.
How are your seeds selling now? Do you know?
Oh, seeds are just through the roof. I interviewed the CEO of Botanical Interests, which is a huge, wonderful seed company based in Boulder, Colorado, or Denver, whatever, somewhere in Colorado. Just they have never seen demand like this. They saw some of it around 2008 with the economic downturn. They saw some of it in the year 2000 when we approached Y2K and we were nervous about what was going to happen. But nothing like this. I mean, just off the charts when it comes to seeds. And you know that's the great thing. We love to put our hands in the dirt. It's a healthy thing. It's a good thing. And seed starting is something anybody can do it. And so the interest, the demand is just incredible. Um, and that's fun to see. The demand in plant, because this book too talks about the fact that the first government subsidized plant ever in history. A lot of people think, oh, it was peanuts or it was tobacco or it was corn. It was not. It was baptisia or false indigo, which is a beautiful perennial we grow in our landscapes right now. But the
What was it for
British,
dye?
yeah, dye, exactly. And the British want, they were at war and their supply in the West Indies or whatever dried up, and then they found that they could get it out of South Carolina, and the demand was great, and they were shipping tons of it to Europe and to Britain. But then this little thing called the Revolutionary War came along, and they threw the tea in the Boston Harbor, and then yeah, that all changed.
You are a history fan.
So I am.
Well, Rick, it was so great talking to you. So fun. But it's Michigan and I'm outside and I'm getting cold.
Okay.
So we'll
Fun
call
to
it a
talk
night.
to you,
Thank
Penny.
you. I hope you come back and see us again. It was such fun talking to you.
I'll do that, and thank you for everything you do and KDL does for our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.